Do what thou swill be the whole piece of law.
In September 1931, a fishing boat called the Colinda was going about its normal fishing route off the coast of Norwich in the United Kingdom when their fishing vessel drew up a large clump of peat instead of fish. Now, what makes this event so special and not just another piece of dust in the massive halls of history? Well, this peat contained a 13,000-year-old, 8.5-inch long spearhead carved from a deer antler. This was a surprise. Now, as people look into where this arrowhead was found, they would find a massive undiscovered landmass over the course of the next 60 years, with an impressive archaeological repertoire and a large piece of European history that the entire continent had forgotten. Lowlands in Europe are not a new thing. Belgium and the Netherlands have them in spades. But what would happen if you found the lowest land in Europe, an area that would pave the way for the modern English Channel? And in 1990, almost 60 years after its discovery, it would be dubbed as Doggerland, due to the Dutch fishermen that used to trawl the area back in medieval times, being called doggers, and not because a bunch of dogs lived there, unfortunately. But back to the spearhead. What could this mean? Well, if you're talking about obvious conclusions, it points to the fact that humans or some form of life that could create tools were here at some point. But the timeline is unclear, so where do you start? Well, the oldest recorded relic that we have is a piece of Neanderthal skull that is over 40,000 years old. That would put this back in the Pleistocene era, the time of mammoths and other large animals and megafauna, before the last glacial maximum, where the ice determined where you could live and what your day today would look like. However, these would probably be the last Neanderthals, as they would go extinct around 40,000 to 37,000 years ago. But when I say the term lost continent, a lot of people like to think of a utopic paradise, one where trees and animals and people all coexist in this one massive Garden of Eden style paradise. That would be in the Mesolithic era, one that resembles the lowlands of the Netherlands and Belgium today, a very fertile place, one where it's good to grow crops before the salt water encroaches and destroys the land. But this would be approximately 18,000 years ago, as the ice from the glacial maximum had begun to recede and reveal Doggerland from its icy tomb. You would see a Doggerland with lush trees and bushes, where hunter-gatherers hunted and gathered, with more artifacts such as spearheads and arrowheads littering the archaeological record, the bones of their prey, and the pollen from willows and hazels, telling us what they ate, what they would have lived like, and where they would have rested their heads every day. And it wasn't all this paradisical lowland. They also had marshes and swamps, and knowing modern archaeology, people will be looking to scour them as much as they can, as bogs and marshes and swamps all have a tendency to perfectly preserve, or at least preserve to the best of their ability, whatever is entombed within them. And this could give us a lot more about its archaeological history. And, of course, this also wouldn't be the end of the change for the humans living there, going from an ice-entombed land to a paradise of willows, hazels, shrubs, moss, and massive animals. At around 11,000 years ago, the last ice age would end. This would have meant that the ice fully began to recede, and large amounts of water would have begun to fill oceans all over the world. And now these lowland areas, commonly known as the land bridges, which are theorized to have connected Alaska and Siberia, as well as Doggerland would have connected the UK to Ireland and mainland Europe. These lowland areas would have begun to flood first, as with the receding glacial ice storing all the water, it would have brought about massive flooding to the lower areas of Doggerland, and eventually, over thousands and thousands of years, would gradually sink the continent. Now, in this story, Doggerland has a bit of a crux of fate if you could say. As with all of ancient history, much is disputed as no solid records were around to have fully documented everything, so we must act from what we have. The other theory that is a lot more eye-catching that you may have heard about this from is that this land was sunk all at once in something known as the Storega Slide in about 6200 BC. This slide was a large displacement of debris. Over 800 cubic meters of debris was deposited deeper into the ocean off the coast of Norway, as it is hypothesized that gases entombed deep beneath the rock made it unstable, and a shelf collapsing led to a massive slide. Now, this displacement did not go unnoticed, even though it took place completely underneath the surface of the ocean. This triggered a massive tsunami, and at its height it could have been well over 50 feet tall, and some of the loose proof that we have that isn't below the surface of the ocean is debris deposited as far as modern-day Scotland. Now, is one of these more true over the other? I personally always like taking the middle ground approach. Why not say a little of both? The land was already flooding, it was just that the blow that brought about its end was brought about by this slide and this massive tsunami that swept across Doggerland, as we still have old wood and other remains that are still washing up to this day. But since this land is gone, what's the significance of discussing ancient history? What are the modern day applications? Well, as we talked about before, this is considered to be the way that humans got onto the British Isles as well as Ireland. It is also currently one of the largest archaeological deposits of ancient Europeans that has been yet to be discovered, as we all know that the ocean is harder to explore than some of the other areas, namely because of all the water. But even if you knew all of that, I bet you didn't know that some Frenchman, it's always the French, isn't it, by the name of Jean de Ruel proposed that the mythical city of Atlantis lay in Doggerland, with Plato's myths being reinterpreted to it as it being an island of circumstance, as they had dug large reservoirs to keep the city from sinking into the North Sea to combat the flooding, one that had been created by the hands of man, rather than one out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And even though Plato did not know it, the argument for why it would have been sunk in the first place was due to the slide. He also claimed that further exploration of Doggerland would lead to the discovery of Atlantean megaliths that had been yet to be found. But despite all of de Ruel's hope that his claims would come to fruition, since 1990, no megaliths have ever been found in Doggerland. If you put aside the theories of one man who might or might not be coming off the 1940s German Atlantean ideology, it's always fascinating to think about how the globe would look or have changed politically had Doggerland and many of the other land bridges never sunk, or if they had just been a little higher, or the oceans were less deep, and those changes are too many to enumerate. But that's what makes the Lost Lands so fascinating, thinking about what could have been had they not been lost in the first place. Before you go, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. I know this video is a bit of a different pace from what I normally do, but please bear with me. I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. We will be back to regularly scheduled programming next week, I hope. If you did enjoy it, I would like you to please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out in the algorithm, and I've been feeling a bit down about my performance recently. I always read every comment. I appreciate every little tick of the numbers going up. Just know that your efforts will not be neglected. I'm not asking you for money, I'm just asking for personal fulfillment, which arguably is a little harder to achieve. But hey, for you it takes less than 3 seconds. As for some other content that I could recommend, there will be a playlist at the end of this video involving all of my delves into esoteric history. And just as one last thing, if you do comment, please leave your favorite lost land or megalith or anything that is lost to time. I really do like the mysteries of finding out about these things, even though they're usually a little blander than people like to romanticize them as. But anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you again next week.